Hello there, everybody. My name is Heather Fleming, and I am the Executive Director at Change Labs in Tuba City. And I want to welcome all of you to our second of a four-part dialogue on how COVID-19 is impacting the Navajo small business community. Before we get started with today's agenda, I did want to give everyone an overview of what Change Labs is and what we do. So first and foremost, I mentioned that we're located in Tuba City and we provide creative tools, workspace, resources, and knowledge for Native entrepreneurs, both in the Tuba City community and surrounding Navajo and Hopi communities. One of the most common questions that we get, this is the reason why we exist really, is how do I start a business? So if that's any of you in the audience today, I wanted to make sure that you knew about some of the resources that we have available to you. First and foremost, I would definitely recommend that you check out our business coaching appointments. Right now, we're hosting them every Monday, all day long. There's a rotating group of business coaches that are fantastic, that specialize in different things. It's free to make an appointment. And if you're interested, you can go to our website, which is nativestartup.org, and hit in /events to see the list of coaching appointments available. I also recommend that you check out our business incubator. We're one of the only Native-led business incubators for Native people operating in the US. Our moderator today, Jessica Stago, is the director of the Change Labs Business Incubator, and you can learn more about that program at /incubator. And I know that applications for the 2022 program are going to be opening in January or February next year. So definitely, if you're interested in that, now is the time to check it out and start putting together some application materials. I also want to direct all of you to our YouTube channel. We now have more than 50 videos that cover a wide range of topics, from how to start a business on the Navajo Nation, how to prototype packaging concepts for your jewelry, how to build a logo, how to build a website. It's a fantastic resource. I will be sure to put the link to our YouTube video in the chat window, and also the recording of this session. You know, if you need to step out early, or if you want to rewatch it later, this will be on our YouTube channel in the next 48 hours. If you have more questions about Change Labs, our work and what we do, I want to direct you to my colleague, Marcia Greyeyes. This is her email, just marcia@nativestartup.org. And in fact, for our whole team, it's just the first name at nativestartup.org if there's somebody specific that you wanted to reach out to. A little bit of housekeeping. If you would like to speak during today's discussion, just raise your little Zoom hand. It should be on the bottom right of in your like Zoom control panel. You should feel free to type questions and ideas in either the Q&A or the chat window. Either place will be checked by our moderator, Jessica Stago. And again, this session is being recorded on YouTube. Let's keep it a family-friendly event. But we've never had a problem with that, actually, so I'm not that worried about it. And then I mentioned that this is the second in a four-part series. We invite you all to join us for our next dialogue, which is scheduled for Wednesday, December 1st, and it's going to be focused on artisans and professional service providers. We have some exciting new panelists joining that event, and our concluding event will be December 8th, where we will host Navajo Nation Division of Economic Development Director J.T. Willie and council delegates to share our priorities as it relates to the small business community. So that's definitely a don't miss dialogue. The last thing I am going to do before I hand it over to our guest today is share with you what you're gonna hear today, and then quickly mention the poll. So next, I'm going to hand it over to our partners and friends and colleagues at Causal Design to step you through the report that Causal Design, Change Labs, and Navajo Nation Division of Economic Development have been working on this past year. This report was launched in mid-October. I'll be sure to put a link in the chat window to that too if you haven't seen it yet. And it's studying the economic impact of COVID-19 on the Navajo business community. So to ground today's discussion, it's important that we talk through some of the research findings and the recommendations from that report, and then couple that to actual anecdotes and stories from Navajo business owners, what they're experiencing. That panel discussion will be moderated by my colleague, Jessica Stago, and she will leave time at the end for any of you, our audience members, to join the conversation. You can speak, or if you prefer, you can put things in the chat window. It's up to you. And throughout the panel discussion, there will be a series of polls, three polls that will take over your screen. And these polls are our way of collecting your information on how COVID-19 has impacted your business. The polls are entirely optional. You don't have to give us that information, but just so that you're not too surprised when a poll starts showing up on your screen. And I'll be sure to alert you in the chat window when that's going to happen. So now I am going to gracefully transition this over to my colleague, Raymar from Causal Design. Let me just promote him to panelist and make sure I go off screen here. But thank you guys, and welcome to the dialogue.
Thank you so much, Heather, for the introduction. As Heather said, my name is Raymar Macaranis, and I was one of the researchers involved with the analysis of the impacts of COVID-19 on Navajo small businesses. The work we're presenting today reflects the combined efforts of Causal Design, Change Labs, and as Heather mentioned, the Navajo Nation Division of Economic Development. A little bit more about ourselves on the next slide here. Causal Design is a research organization whose mission is to create cultures of evidence, and we've been proud to have Change Labs as a partner as they invest in working to both nurture and support Navajo entrepreneurs and small businesses to give back on their community. The report that we're discussing today, the next slide, please, is just one of several ways that we've engaged the small business community as well as other stakeholders in business and government, all with the aim of contributing to the effort of trying to create a climate where all Navajo can build a livelihood and thrive. On the next slide, we have a bit of the study objectives. So when trying to understand and unpack the ways that COVID impacted the Navajo Nation, our analysis was guided by three specific objectives, and these are written out here. So, right, we wanted to gauge just broadly how COVID-19 was impacting the Navajo small business community, but we also wanted to focus on what the tribal government could do now, and what ways we could think about future and long-term sustainability of any improvements that are made during this time. In the next slide, we go a little bit into the methodology and how we go about answering that question. And so, Causal Design and Change Labs took time to really sit down with DED to understand what information was readily available and what analysis could be undertaken. And based on this back and forth, the final methodology, it really would evolve to rely on a combination of these two approaches. And the first is a deep dive with small business owners that was really meant to try and capture the details and nuances around the challenges that they faced. And paired or combined with that, we executed this market mapping exercise, which tried to get at kind of these sector level barriers. And what I mean by that is illustrated on the next slide. Because what we're trying to do with this exercise was isolate on a more general level where the chain is breaking down with regards to how a business is able to get their supplies or inputs and how they're then able to maintain regular operations and meet and reach their clients or customers. Now, I want to jump into some specific findings of the report and its focus on small businesses as a whole before moving on to specific recommendations. So on the first takeaway, it can't be understated the deep personal and human impact that the pandemic has had on the community and on social systems. And I think this was illustrated very poignantly in the opening video to this event. The pandemic has taken away so much in that regards. And when we take our lens, which is focused on small businesses, and focus it on what that impact looked like there, what we see is that this ability to cope, to bounce back, is limited in part by a disconnect with both formal and informal support networks for businesses. And I'm not trying to point the finger anywhere specifically, but in our interviews and discussions, what was clear is that most individual business owners simply did not know where to go to get that industry, financial, or just general business advice or support or recommendations. So excuse me. So to us, what this really points to, again, is this disconnect that really varies by sector, and where it's either these traditional support mechanisms where they're business or trade associations or public sector business support agencies, either those aren't known to the general public, or maybe they're too limited in resources or their ability to provide meaningful support. So this lack of the support network then gets exacerbated by what we have on the next slide, which points to the difficulties of doing business on the Navajo Nation. So, it's not a secret that there are processes and regulations on the Navajo Nation that can be cumbersome to the business community. However, things that might have been maybe minor inconveniences before the pandemic, when we're talking about a very constrained environment, now become really amplified and multiplied in ways that make it extremely difficult to keep a business running and keep the doors open. And this bleeds into other areas where access to support systems may be kept behind, kind of more cumbersome processes or regulations that really need to be re-examined for streamlining. Because what we see on the next slide is that when support does happen, when support is delivered, it is absolutely vital and critical to the businesses that receive them. Where we see these financial resources provide the means to stay open, to keep employees hired, and weather the challenges that they're facing, this support makes a real difference. But it's also clear, and we'll go into in the next slide as well, that the challenges within the climate now are extremely complicated. And so on the next slide. Yep, here we go. The solutions, what we want to highlight here is that, it's not just one issue that businesses are facing, and the entire situation right now can be quite complicated depending on what sector you're in. But that also means that the solutions differ by sector, making it hard to really find a one-size fits all answer, and making it unlikely that things like cash alone are going to be what get the small business economy back on its feet. And so based on that, we've identified what we feel are some short-term and long-term solutions that can be helpful, and categorize them under some different buckets, right? So you'll see on the next slide them listed out here. So the first one, improving the business environment. So we've got some recommendations under there. The first is around thinking about how to improve the business environment in this current context. And what stands out is trying to address as much of the ambiguity and uncertainty as possible so that businesses can better plan. And that means communicating about what it means to reopen and stay open. It also means sharing some of those external costs for reopening. And we've seen in other contexts the role of boards and associations in trying to coordinate on behalf of individual businesses to signal to the rest of the community, the rest of the world, that the business community or this specific sector is ready to engage. And again, different sectors will likely need to approach this differently based on their own kind of unique needs. And finally, going back to one of the findings we had flagged earlier, one recommendation is to take steps to create more of that support network into the business community as a whole. This might mean diverting more resources to, say, a chamber or expanding mandates to other agencies, or promoting more robust industry groups and associations to fill in some of these roles. Now, going to this, to the second piece around providing direct to business support. When we say that, what we focus on are some of the more immediate needs that we think may need to be met. And what we focus on here are the mechanisms that are in place to deliver that support. So ensuring that those systems are streamlined, easy to access, and have dedicated support for users who are engaging them will be really needed, especially if these are new systems that we're trying to introduce to help out the community. I think that was definitely one of the goals that DED had and thought a lot about when they were delivering their CARES Act funding, and we know that that's something that they'll continue to improve. And the final recommendation here is around thinking creatively about alternative places that businesses may also receive additional capacity and support, and having policy or decision makers create ways to make those partnerships more available, whether it's through existing organizations or partners in universities. On the third recommendation, providing a sector-specific report, when thinking about food and hospitality specifically, we focused a bit on this sector as being very reliant on supplies and materials, right? The ability to get access to these inputs, both in a timely and really an affordable manner, will be a really major concern to these businesses moving forward. So in this case, additional financial support may be really critical for those who have a lot of these inputs that they need to either bring to customers or manage on behalf of them. And finally, on the final recommendation, addressing long-term business resilience, when we're thinking about long-term improvements, we're focused on addressing some of the more embedded processes for accessing information or government services. And in many cases, addressing access means improving or streamlining those processes and then enshrining them within more modern or digital infrastructure so that it improves the business environment as a whole by reducing what are very real costs in terms of finances and time for business owners. But of course, this modernization also kind of relies on the assumption of improved or expanded access to broadband. And really that issue should go hand in hand with a lot of these efforts, right? So, these recommendations as a whole represent kind of higher level insights from the report. But I'm really excited to transition to more specific discussion and nuanced conversation with our panelists today to explore a bit more about how businesses within food and hospitality sector have overcome or continue to manage some of these challenges that I've brought up. So with that, I'll pass it back. I'll pass it back to Change Labs, and thanks for the chance to talk through the report.
Thank you, Raymar. I really appreciate that. And without further ado, I am going to invite my colleague and co-founder, Jessica Stago, to introduce you all to our fabulous panelists today. But give me a hot second while I move them all to the panel room. And if I can ask all of our panelists to please turn on their video and unmute themselves. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Jess.
Thank you, Heather and Raymar, for that summary of the report. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited about this conversation. I am Jessica Stago. I'm the Director of Business Incubation at Change Labs. She Jessica Stago shia but anishle do zilka ambashichin ki ani dashiche do zilka andashinale. And we're here today to talk to two incredible entrepreneurs. I'm very proud to moderate this discussion between Verna Yazzie, owner of MonetValley BnB, located in Monument Valley, and also Cherilyn Yazzie with Coffee Pot Farms, and her farm is located in Delcon. So I want to thank Cherilyn and Verna for joining us and for sharing your knowledge and your experience through this pandemic and operating your businesses. And as I said, you're two incredible entrepreneurs. So we're extremely lucky that you took the time to join us today and are willing to share your experience through this difficult time. So we'll go ahead and get started with the questions. And so we have a few questions. Feel free to just jump in. I want to just make this an informal discussion, and then we'll also take some questions from the audience. So the first question is really about, during the pandemic, we saw that there was a huge negative impact on the health and safety of our communities, and also the inability for businesses to even be open. There was a quick closure of many, many businesses across the nation very quickly. But we also know that there was also an impact on how these businesses operate, the ability for them to meet the critical needs of even just operations. So as business owners, what issues do you think were important for our policymakers and leaders to know about? And I'll just start with Cherilyn, and then she can hand it over to Verna.
All right, thank you, Jessica and Change Labs. And I'm a farmer here on Navajo Nation, and my farm is called Coffee Pot Farms in Delcon. And we grow on half acre currently in the market farm style method. And your question and this study is really important because I think it's time that as small business owners and even individual Navajos ourselves, we need to start coming together to really hold our government, our tribal leaders accountable to some of the things that are happening or not happening in our communities and our businesses. I know for me personally, I've heard always again and again, we're here to help you, we want to do this for you. But, to me, it's just a lot of the talk and there's not the follow through to it. And that was very apparent to me during the pandemic because, there was not any communication to anybody about how are you doing? Your small business does this, it's important. How are you doing? Is there any way we could help? Some of those questions came from people that were outside of the Navajo Nation. People called us and said, how are you doing? Is there some way we can help? Is there, can we send you PPE? What is it? So that was something that I saw a huge, it was just something that was like, wow, I don't know how our leaders, our Navajo leaders are really helping us. Are they helping us? And I think for us, it's time that we need to get together. We need to be organizing ourselves to strategically figure out how we ask for these things in terms of I know the purpose behind this is the ARPA funding. And, if that helps other small businesses to grow, then that needs to happen. We need to be able to help one another in that way. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Cherilyn. Verna, did you have anything to add to that?
Listening to Cherilyn, a lot of it is true that there was really no support coming from the Navajo Nation office. There was really no one to kind of ask, visit our community. Inside MonetValley, everything was shut down. So with my business, I had to cancel all of my reservations, and I pretty much just stayed home and did nothing. But just even the local tribal parks, just a few times they did reach out, but it was mostly in terms of home, people that live down there. It was kind of community outreach, stuff like that. But in terms of business, there was really no help at all. Nobody reached out to me. And when I did try to reach out to the Navajo Nation, there was no one answering the phone. I did emails. There was no follow-up or response to my emails. And it just became really discouraging, and I just quit trying. And then as far as with the CARES Act, ARPA, I tried to apply for that one. And then midway, I felt that there was so much documents that they were asking for that I didn't even have. And so I just didn't think it pertained to me anymore at that point. So I just left it alone, never finished applying for the ARPA or CARES Act, the artisan grant. Yeah, so that's pretty much how it's been a struggle. So through the pandemic, my business was not in operation. It's still closed now because I still have to go through the steps of getting the certification in order for me to operate, open my business inside tribal park. So it will be a while before I reopen my business.
Thank you, Verna. So I think that, I'm really glad to hear that, yes, we came together as a community to reach out to each other and check on each other. And I think that we do that naturally because we have close-knit communities. But how do we, get the government, as Cherilyn said, to even be concerned or show concern or show awareness of the importance of small businesses like yours and what that means for our communities, and how do we get them to implement some of what the report showed needs to happen, things like reducing ambiguity, transparency and simplification of some of the business processes. Do you feel like there's support out there for that? Do you think there's supports there that people aren't accessing, or do you think that there are no supports or resources that are available to entrepreneurs like yourselves that would help with some of the issues in terms of like getting recertified or completing the documentation that you need for those grant programs or other resources that the tribe has to offer, especially moving forward as we're looking into the ARPA funding? So do you think that resources and supports exist and they're just not being accessed, or are there truly no support networks or resources available to people?
For the MonetValley community where I live, I was not really aware of that there was some help through the Utah State University, and they knew that there was some grants there because I didn't reach out in time for them. By the time I reached out to them, a lot of these deadlines had passed, and so. But they still wanted to help out in terms of getting the business certification and help me in that process. I've contacted a lady. She does come down into our community, and just need to visit with her on a timely basis and then go through the process. She's helped several business get their business certification through the Navajo Nation. And then also locally, there is a small area, pretty much where people with small business can utilize space, can utilize Wi-Fi, internet, printing, anything to help their business during this difficult time. And so that one has been a new development. It's been connected for a couple of months. I'd say about 2 months, 3 months, something like that's very new. And so I just kind of toured the facility there at the Welcome Center in MonetValley, and so that is an excellent support for one of my relatives who also has a small business. And so, according to her, it really helps promote her business and stay on top of with her reservation, with her touring and her food, operating the food stand there in MonetValley. So just within that community in MonetValley, I do have some support system. But as far as Gianta, which I'm a chapter of, I haven't really tapped into any resources from there or the Tuba City office, which is they told me that I need to work with the Western Agency Business Economic Office, and so that's again a lot of throughout the pandemic, a lot of the offices were closed, and so it was difficult to get a hold of anyone at that point.
Thank you. Those are some awesome resources that you mentioned, and I do want to mention that the resource that opened in MonetValley at the Welcome Center is an initiative of Yeha Othnido, which is the Navajo and Hopi COVID relief group. And so, and I think that it's interesting that out of the pandemic, that created this relief group, it really showed some of what was really needed in the community. And then that's where that initiative came from, to provide these supports for the organizations, including businesses that are important for our communities. And so recognizing that and starting an initiative, I think is something I'm glad you mentioned. And I wanted to kind of give a little information on that. So Cherilyn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because I think as Native entrepreneurs, we're all doing different things. There's artisans, there's people who are in tourism, and myself, I'm in agriculture. And I think there are, to me, there's not resources that would be very specific to helping each individual entrepreneur in those sectors, to be very successful. I think some of the times the programs that might be offered or the whatever funding, it's too one size fits all, and everybody has different needs. I know the basic needs is usually like your permits for land or permits for water. Those are what we all need, but I think individually, I don't feel like those resources that help us specifically to be successful in what we're doing really helps us. An example I can give is like customer discovery. I don't think that, we really know who our customers are, and there's no way to really get like training or workshops or something that would help us to learn who they are, how to talk to them, how to get them engaged, and how they can buy our products. And so I don't feel like we have that on the nation. I don't think that, I've looked on the website for the Navajo Nation's economic, their site. I don't see anything that helps us to do those things, to learn new skills, to learn about how to market yourself on the internet, how to even do website building. I don't think that they provide that kind of service. And so, those things are very important, especially now. That's what I've been learning through this pandemic, is reaching out to, again, outside. There's a lot of resources out there that have, showed us, this is how you're going to set up, how you would do your marketing on the internet. How do you find your customers? This is how you talk to them, how you do email marketing. All of that is something that's a new skill that even me, I get scared when I have to do that, learning how to do the website. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to mess up my internet. I'm going to mess up my website. So those kind of things, I think that, we need to learn how to do that. And those are very important skills that we should be learning. I really am honest that I don't think those are available to us as business people. It's a good question.
Thank you, Cherilyn. I do you want to maybe mention a few of the resources that you've been able to access that were even outside the reservation that other people might be able to access?
Well, some of the things that I did was, I think early on when the pandemic started, I know Change Labs had a list of resources and you guys just had it on your website. And so that's kind of where I just started. And I just started clicking on everything and just going in and it took me down these rabbit holes. And I started signing up for workshops on how to do email marketing. So I did things like with Lady Quinn Tempest in Phoenix on how to find and do this marketing, even like as simple as how to do Instagram, because that's why I went to her. I was like, how do you do Instagram? I'm not new to this. And the new thing is like TikTok. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do TikTok too. I didn't even know what that is. So it was really just getting on the internet and finding somebody who is good at this, who does a really good job that I admire. And I just go and start looking at, trolling them and just like, okay, I'm going to find out what they're doing. And if they offer something or if they say something in their workshops or presentations, I write it down and then I look it up and then I follow it up. So one of the really cool things that we did this year was with Better Business Bureau down in Phoenix. They had a business accelerator program that, I was fortunate enough to be a part of. And out of that, we did a lot of really cool marketing. We have some videos on YouTube called Made in America. There's 4 small series, and it follows, one of my friends, Dizzy Ramsey from Just Entertainment. And we follow our story through what had happened during the pandemic. And so those are some of the things that, one of the resources that I, that was really fortunate to be part of.
Thank you. That's awesome. I'm glad that you reached out to these resources that we try to amplify. And there's, even if we could continue to do that, I know there's other issues around, accessing a good internet connection, because a lot of these resources are off the reservation. But I also want to go back to something that Verna said about being located in Monument Valley, and the closest resource for her in terms of getting her business certified and getting those business processes done is in Tuba City at the Western Agency RBDO. And that's not close to Monument Valley, right? That's a whole day's task to be able to go and do that and take care of that. And so I think that points to some of the challenges that we outlined in the report about having increasing access through digitization and modernization of these processes but then that goes to the availability of high-speed internet and broadband and things like that. So I think just to kind of look at this question in terms of the scale of the solutions that we need in order for businesses to have the supports and resources that they could use to start and grow their businesses. So of the challenges and the issues in the industry of food and hospitality, what issues would you tackle today versus tomorrow? Like, what are the things that need to be addressed today in the industry that you're in, and maybe some ideas around that?
Okay, I'll go first. And today I would probably tackle the communication to open the need of communication between small business, as with the Navajo Nation Economic Division and really sit down and talk about ways that they can help us and, to go through the business process, getting your certification and all those documents as well. And I think that would need to be done today. And then tomorrow, go ahead and really reach out to the community, my MonetValley and just all over the reservation to really reach out to even through the local chapter and where you can reach more people that have small business that they can benefit from that as well.
Thank you, Verna. Cherilyn?
So right now, currently for us, we're growing food on our home site. And I think for me, what we're working on is getting water for our farm. That's going to be the most important thing for us that we're working on today. So we are raising money to do that. And I'm doing that process of just going down the rabbit hole and just finding out, where we could access some of that money or raise some of that capital that, would fit what we're doing. And, there's applying for grants if we have to. So that's kind of where we're at. We want to be able to do that. And I think just in general, one of the things is the other one is to, work with our partners to communicate with them. And I like that Verna brought that up, is communicate with partners that are willing to help you, to be on your side, to be your support. Those are the ones that, I'm going to be working closely with, because, they might know somebody with our tribal leaders, and that helps me to kind of get in the door, so that way, it's not just me, because I know a lot of the time, some of the things that we're put through, it makes it feel like, it makes it feel so frustrating that, I don't want to be able to deal with that, because my job is to grow food, and I shouldn't be, doing politics, playing politics. I don't want to be doing that. So if there's somebody a partner who could do that for me, that likes to do that, I'd be willing to work with them. I'd be willing to, help them, or, I'd like to be able to do that. So we're going to keep going for our business. We're still going to keep growing food, and I will keep doing, finding new partners. The way we're doing it currently is just kind of showing up and being there and being honest with who we are and what we're doing. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. So I think while we're kind of closing this discussion up, I just want to invite the audience to ask questions in the chat or in the Q&A. But just to kind of recap, I think it's interesting that you both mentioned that one of the most important challenges and that needs to be addressed is coming from the government and their ability to see small businesses, the value of small businesses in our communities, and reach out to understand how they can help the businesses. And there's a variety of ways that, the report outlines, but I think that's interesting that's coming out here and reaching out to small businesses and creating those partnerships across the reservation that can sort of become a voice and support each other so that everybody can benefit from that versus, like you said, Cherilyn, entrepreneurs who are in these certain industries, their business is to grow food, their business is to host tourists and to host visitors in the region, like Verna, or their business is to, be artists and demonstrate the creativity and the talent that's within our communities. They shouldn't have to also be building this business structure. And so maybe we can reach a point where there's a partnership and there's support networks and there's an ecosystem that can do some of that political work to build the political and environmental structure that's needed for businesses to grow. So I really want to thank you both for sharing your experience with us through the pandemic and also your ideas about how we can move forward. And I'm going to go ahead and see if there's any questions here. The last poll just popped up. So if you could answer that, and then I'll see if there's any questions. Okay, there is one question from Raquel Black. She's on the board for the Shanto Economic Development Corporation. And she says, we are currently in the process of getting a hotel opened in our community. I think a lot of our success came from our close relationship with our local governance officials, as well as our council delegate. So I guess that's more of a comment. Have you seen that there's some support coming from your actual officials that you've worked with? You both have been in business for, longer than one administration. So we don't have to be specific about anybody, but do you think that do you feel comfortable going to your local elected officials and asking for help about your business?
No, I haven't really they haven't reached out, or I haven't reached out to my local council delegate, even though he's a real close relative of ours. It's just that even on a separate matter, we did reach out to him on the whole business in MonetValley and how they can help us. But we never got any feedback from him, and so maybe I am still kind of in the dark about it. So no, I don't know if he's still helping us or not.
Okay.
So for me, I have not, I know who the elected officials are, but I know kind of early on when I left my full-time job to pursue this, one of the things that, was to get into, to be a part of that whole system and showing up at the chapter meetings, voting, doing all of that stuff. I'm really honest, it didn't feel like it would go anywhere. And so I didn't feel like it was beneficial to me at the time, because when I started doing that, it was like, okay, I need to start a business. And there's not what they're talking about, what they're voting on right now is like way too far in how they're talking about things and how slow it takes to get those things here, that it wasn't beneficial. So I kind of didn't, pursue that route. It needed to happen quickly. And so it was like moving forward, because I know for us starting that farm, you have to have your infrastructure. And I know, like I said, we're still working on our water, which is going to be a big investment, but there's all these little tools that you have to have. And that was my reason that, I didn't pursue that, and I didn't go after work with our officials. And then at this point, it doesn't seem like what I'm asking for from them is not going to be the same. Their goals and objectives are different from mine. And maybe later it's going to kind of meet up, but at this time, we're not following the same path. So that's why I didn't pursue it.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way when they try to reach out to those who do make themselves available. Everybody can attend their chapter meetings, but when you go to the chapter meetings, are they really discussing those things that are going to be helpful to you? And as entrepreneurs, you don't have a lot of time in terms of that you can spend down a path that's not going to be helpful for your new business. So I can understand that. So so there's a question from Arlene Ed. If small businesses are not a priority to our community leaders, how do we organize to get our voices heard? I think that's a very important question. And maybe you both you've already mentioned some ideas, but what are some maybe specifics that you would want to throw out there that could happen, or anything you've seen happening that's helpful?
I could go. I haven't. So one of the things that I think is going to be helpful for us is that we need small business owners. We need to start working with one another. And I know you guys, hold on. You guys are in the Change Labs has their Navajo Hopi Observer. And I know I was reading it, and I am, in there quoted as saying that we need to work together. There's also in there that we're working with Carlos Deal and Jermaine from Rocky Ridge, the Rocky Ridge store. So we need to be connecting with one another. So that way I know, like for Verna, if I worked with her, what would her needs be? How can she work with me? So that way we are building that trust, and we're establishing that relationship. And I know, her goals, what she's good at. She knows me, and she will know if she can rely on me. And that will kind of help us to move forward in terms of, like, if we need something happening, something that we need to be doing in the bigger sense, like asking for those funds or whatever. It might not even be money. It might just be like, hey, I need some help. I need you to, can you grow some food for me? Or, hey, can you come out and show me how to do this? Something simple like that. We just need to be working together. I think, for me personally, we need to stop trying to ask our tribe, because I don't know if they're going to help us. They take too long. And that was evident with the CARES. They ran out of time with their money, and it's taking them a really long time to figure out even how to use this next pot of money. And with the current economy, if it crashes, I don't know if it's going to, just like kind of little bit that I know about money, with them printing all of this money and the cost of everything is going up, they're going to run out of time to spend all of that fun. And so we need to just do whatever we can right now. I want to try to do the best I can to be a good relative, and just whatever small way I can help, I'll do my best, but, I might not be able to always, help in that big way. But I think just getting to know each other is one of the first step for us. Amongst just the small business owners, we need it kind of reminds me of like some kind of high school clique. Because you guys, I understand, your frustrations, and I can feel it, when you start talking about this and that, I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And so that feels good. It feels good to know that kind of, to have that kind of relationship and understanding. Thanks.
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, we were just wondering about any specific ideas you have on how the small businesses can organize to have their voices heard. And I think it doesn't necessarily need to be, in the government or toward the government. It can be just, like Cherilyn described, being in community with each other, and so that you can benefit from, the experience and being empathetic with each other in terms of your experience as entrepreneurs. So any ideas to see more of that, or do you see anything that's happening out there that you like, that you think we should do more of?
Mm-hmm. For myself, I'm pretty active on social media through Instagram. And so through that channel, I was able to receive a lot of, I can make connections with a lot of people who are willing to help me with web design, in terms of investment into, like building a capital fund to help with starting the business back up. And then another thing is, right now I am attending school at Fort Lewis College, and so my degree is business administration, and so I'm really learning a lot more about the marketing and the financial part. And so I think like like Cherilyn mentioned, we need to find a way that we can connect, network among ourselves as a small business, and then tap into what type of expertise that we're willing to put to the table. Like for myself, I know a lot more about marketing as well as finance. I'm not really too good with the QuickBooks and the really financial part of it. And that's something that I'm still learning at this time. And then also another thing that we can share is share our process of how we're able to navigate through the difficulties, even as our own. We're like you said, we can't really depend on the Navajo Nation government because they're really limited on their helping small business because they're too busy, or it's just they don't really have the resources for that one. But just among ourselves, I think we can network and provide expertise of what we're good at. And here with my community, I do have relatives that also operate the hospitality, and so I'll touch base with two of my counterparts and ask them, say, hey, what do you guys do when this situation comes up? Or how's your business doing through this pandemic? Are you open, or are you limiting folks? Or how are you dealing with in terms of PPE? And then also network with the tour business, the one that drives people into the valley, and so kind of network with them. And if we have people interested in Hogan accommodations, and then I can work with them and help each other along the way in that process. So for me, I feel that I'm in a good location, so I have like a small network of people that I can work with, and that really helps.
Thank you. I love this because networking and creating relationships and connecting entrepreneurs so they can learn and support each other. Like, of all the challenges, that's something we can do. That's something that everybody can do. Everybody can take part in that. And we all have the resources to reach out and make those connections and also, create, and Change Labs does, want to create these opportunities and events where we can come together. And I think there's other organizations out there that can do that. So it's like, we have these huge challenges, but this one we can address, and we can, and we have the resources and the ability to do that, where there's a lot that we don't have. So I wanted to read what Candice Mendez wrote about the need for more events to bring together Navajo small businesses that are aimed toward networking, collaboration, and support. And agreeing with Cherilyn about the need to create a community of entrepreneurs. So we're getting toward the end of the event. So I want to thank you both again for joining us today. I think it's really, really great to see you both thriving and also able to discuss your challenges that you experienced over the last year. And so people can hear about that and also see you both here with so many ideas and so much hope for the future. And so I really want to thank you for spending your hour with us, and for everybody who's on the call in the audience. Also, Hyehet, thanks for being in community with us and spending your time to learn, and also, begin to reach out and develop an ecosystem and a system of support for our entrepreneurs. So Hyehet, thank you, everybody. And I will conclude the event. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. And don't forget to join us for the next event. Just go to /COVID-19 to see the next two dialogues. And ahia everyone for joining us today.